Hi there, I'm Ivy, and this is Museum of the Ancestors, a miniature series where memory meets making. Each scene is a tribute to the people who came before me. This one? This is for my grandmother, Mildred. She never had a greenhouse in real life, but in this miniature world, she finally does. In this video, I'm working on the yard just outside her greenhouse. Today's task? Laying down static grass. Yes, I'm literally shocking fake grass upright with a handheld sieve and a couple of batteries. And yes, it's as ridiculous and satisfying as it sounds. But beneath all that, there's something deeper. Because this isn't just about ground cover. It's about grounding myself in memory. Mildred was born in 1917, and she loved her name. She used to joke that it spelled out my old red, like a lipstick shade, or maybe a polite warning. She was a newspaper reporter in a small Indiana town, sharp as a tack and never afraid of ink on her fingers. She married my grandfather in 1940 when they were both 23, and it wasn't until 8 years later that they had their first child, my Uncle Gregory. They built their life slowly and deliberately, planting roots before raising children. In photos I have of her, including this one from the local paper, she stands head and shoulders above every other woman in the room, literally. She was tall, strikingly so for her time, and you can see it in the way she carries herself. Confident, capable, and completely herself. Now, she didn't have a greenhouse. There wasn't money for something like that. Not when my grandfather was sick and couldn't work for long stretches. He had type 1 diabetes, what they called juvenile diabetes back then. Managing it in the 40s and 50s meant that life was often one step away from crisis. When my dad was in junior high school, Mildred went back to work to keep the household going. Everyone pitched in. Even my dad ran 3 paper routes. It was a family held together by ink, sweat, and the quiet strength of a woman who never once asked to be called strong. But that garden, it was her escape. It stretched nearly a full acre, an urban oasis with rhubarb, vegetables, lilacs, and more tomatoes than anyone could ever reasonably eat. It wasn't a greenhouse, but it was lush and alive, and hers. This miniature is the greenhouse I imagined she might have built if her life had allowed her a few more luxuries. I started Museum of the Ancestors because I was tired of forgetting, tired of letting stories slip through the cracks of time and busyness and silence. So I make these tiny rooms, tiny gardens, tiny spaces to honor the people who shaped me. Some of them lived big lives. Some of them lived quiet ones, but all of them mattered. This greenhouse is one of the rooms in that growing museum. So let's get into the technical part, the grass. Static grass is exactly what it sounds like. Tiny nylon fibers that stand up straight using static electricity. Why? Because it looks more realistic than just gluing down green fuzz. You can buy different lengths of it, different shades, and layer them to make it look more natural. For this project, I'm using a 4mm blend. First, I brush on a generous coat of watered down Mod Podge. You don't want it too watery, you want it to stay sticky. Then I load the grass applicator with the fibers, attach the grounding wire to a metal pin I've stuck into the base, and then turn on the machine. When I gently shake the sieve over the glue, the fibers fall, and if everything goes well, they land standing upright like tiny blades of grass reaching for the sun. sometimes things go a little bit sideways. I pictured myself scattering grass fibers everywhere with a sneeze, but no, that didn't happen. I did zap the heck out of myself a couple of times, though. I mean, who lets me around electricity anyway? The mind boggles. Still, it's all part of the charm. Miniature making is equal parts science experiment, improvisation, and accidental comedy. Once I've finished applying the grass, I pick up the platform, flip it upside down, and give it a few firm taps to shake off the loose fibers. Everything that doesn't stick goes back into the container for reuse, because waste not, want not, especially when you're building your grandmother's dream from scratch. This patch of grass? I imagine it just outside her greenhouse door where she might stop to pet her cat Fang, who liked to lay outside in the sun. Where maybe she'd step outside with her morning coffee, black, no sugar, survey her garden, and shake her fist at the squirrels. This isn't just a miniature. This is a portal to a life imagined, to a woman remembered. Now, if we shift over a bit from the lawn, you'll see this little square of earth boxed in by wooden beams. That's not a garden bed. It's a compost heap. My grandmother really had one just like this, framed by old railroad ties and filled with whatever scraps the garden didn't keep. It was, by all accounts, an exceptionally good compost heap. Neighbors talked about it the way some people talk about fine wine. I mean, hey, it's Indiana. I've tried to honor her real-life magnificent compost heap here. The orange bits are polymer clay scrap peels that I made by hand. I was originally going to add banana peels, but she was allergic, so oranges it is. I didn't film the peel making process, which I totally regret right now, but you'll just have to trust that it involved a lot of squinting and a very sharp blade. There's also dried foliage, snipped into miniature fragments, imagined trimmings from a day well spent pulling weeds and sipping sun tea. What I love most about that compost heap, both the real one and the one I've made here, is that it's proof of how much she believed in using what she had. Long before recycling was trendy, she was living it. Burning trash in a pot-bellied stove, composting, canning, reusing everything. That little rusty stove will sit nearby in this scene, just like it did in real life, warming the air as she worked outside in a cardigan she probably patched herself. She was practical, yes, but never small. During World War II, Mildred worked in California as a real-life Rosie the Riveter at the Lockheed Aircraft Factory in Burbank. She moved out there when my grandfather shipped off with the Seabees, and she stayed until he returned. I was just in Burbank not long ago, walking the same streets she once did. Different century, different rhythm, but the same city. Sometimes life writes better poetry than I ever could. After the war, and after raising a family in Indiana, Mildred became a world traveler. She inherited a stretch of land, sold it, and used that windfall to see nearly every continent. She even went to the Soviet Union, twice. This greenhouse, with its compost heap and sun-soaked lawn, might seem small, but it holds the echoes of someone who lived large in her own quiet way. I haven't added any worn paths yet, though I plan to. Paths tell you something lived here, that feet walked across it, that time has passed. Right now, everything's still in that dreamy, just finished state, but we'll scuff it up a little because that's where the soul sneaks in. I didn't grow up rich, and neither did she. But we were both rich in stories, in usefulness, in grit. This miniature greenhouse isn't about building a perfect past. It's about imagining what she might have built if she'd had a little more time, a little more money, and a little less weight on her shoulders. It's wish fulfillment, yes, but it's also remembrance. So thank you for being here, for watching me lay grass and compost in memory. If you've got someone like Mildred in your family, someone who kept things running while nobody was watching, maybe they deserve a greenhouse too, or a room, or a teacup, or just a story told. Next time I'll be showing you how I made some of the plants, planting the crops, layering in those coffee grounds, and roughing up the edges a bit. Until then, take care. Keep making, and remember, the smallest things sometimes hold the biggest truths.